we're going to say three different perspectives, okay? And so allow us just to kind of explain a couple of things, and we might show you something, and this will help complete your coming into a deeper understanding of the next part of your life, okay? Because this is factually what's transpiring. Is there's some major changes occurring, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Now, the trouble with sufficiently understanding your guidance is that, first of all, if you could attempt to rely on maybe 4 different perspectives, or what we would call 4 different tools. And so we would suggest for the next couple of weeks that you would journal. And in journaling, you're trying to be strictly logically male. Okay? Do you understand?
For the rest of this, the client's voice and answers are edited out in order to, for privacy reasons.
Yeah, in other words, and we want to say there's a little bit of a complicated history about masculinity, and what we're saying is that people don't actually understand that the intuitive is a higher form of logic. And you must build a strong foundation of factual, careful logic to strengthen the intuition. Now do you understand why we're suggesting you might try that? So the type of journaling would be writing down like what negative habits you feel awkward about admitting, what realistically is occurring in your relations, what difficulties you are facing or afraid to face. And what this does is this, by very logically, factually being aware as possible of every problem, that actually creates the beckoning for a deeper level of intuition. Do you understand? Because if one is not consciously aware of what they're asking, sometimes it's difficult to understand the answer. Do you understand? Yeah, this is not complicated. It's just saying that, so we're what we understand that you're really asking is a deeper, more seriously trustworthy understanding of what you receive through like your little journeying, like you described. So we're saying if you will trouble yourself to practice strict logic for several weeks in journaling, including writing down what the journey might suggest or what it might mean. Because again, and this is the last time we'll say this, we know you'll find a way to listen to this recording again. It's that the more consciously, logically you understand what are the difficulties in your life, the deeper, more clear obligation the intuitive feels to give the clearest answer possible. They work hand in hand. They are not opposites. Yeah. And so the second thing that we would advise is that when you have a journey where it has like a little vision where it may not be clear, okay? Do you understand what we're speaking of?
Yes.
Then what you would wish to do is then journey about 1 or 2 details, like the next night or later the same evening, and like, you see, these visions, they are masked for, or they are hidden underneath these pictures are deeper thoughts. Do you understand? And let's say that you were curious as to what the claw meant in your life, and so the next journey would start with the claw, and it might be like there might be a little doorway right where that claw joined into the bird, and then you go into that, and we're speaking of going where one journey leads to the next and the next and the next. And instead of trying to arrive at answers, follow and journey on the questions. Do you understand? Make sure that your understanding is complete. And what we're saying is, by, again, laying a very conscious foundation, very logical, of what you don't understand, and then when you lay down, then the next journey will try to be about that. Okay? And so rather than it being one journey, and then the next night a different journey, what starts occurring is the journeys themselves start to link up and provide a storyline, a path, like a fable, a long, long myth. Do you understand? Yeah, again, you sound, as Deo himself was saying, some people want to be taught and other people wish to be told. And at the end, here in a minute, we'll tell you what this means. But we think that you're really requesting to going to a deeper level of understanding how these little visionary things apply to your life and what questions they're trying to answer. Yes, because this will strengthen your trust in life, particularly in yourself. So the third exercise or perspective that we would suggest is, if you do not understand what a journey means, okay? This is similar to the first suggestion, but what we're saying is, if you do not understand what a journey is trying to help you with, then sit down and think, and you can write down a little list, what's troubling you most, what's troubling you next, second. Try to put it in a priority list, because what has occurred is there is a disconnect, a little bit, between understanding the what you're really asking and what your little journeys are giving you answers or clues about. Do you understand? Now, in factuality, you're making a few little complicated decisions now about which path to walk. Do you understand? And it could be to the west or the east. If you understand what these directions stand for, okay? And the west refers to like a very serious study of the contributions to humanity of, for instance, the what we would call the native tribes of America, okay? And the East, in your mind, represents more of like a yogic sort of path. Do you understand? And we would think that it would be best at this time to dedicate yourself to one or the other, and to try to discover how there's been a blending and some confusions in some of the mixtures, particularly in the United States. And these two different paths have very distinct differences. And the biggest difference is the way that they attempt to explain or clarify the unconscious. Do you understand that? Yeah. And so we would this is what this little vision is about, is a little bit of an indecision about choosing which would be the best path. And yet the indications by the nature of the objects that you saw kind of gives you an indication of which path would be best. Do you understand or believe? Yeah. And we can offer a few little hints. There's many difficulties in comprehending or the right teachers or the right classes, and we would suggest that you might seriously consider perhaps spending a little bit of time with maybe 5 or 6 different, we're going to say, Western Indian sorts of teachers or classes, and see which you feel like that would be the most clear, the most trustworthy, that you could perhaps even find an apprenticeship or something where there's a deeper level of teaching. And it might even take you a year or two, to find a good teacher with this, but there's a deepening regard for the earth, a deepening understanding about how the unconscious is really the spiritual mind, and learning how to read various prophecies and signs and these sorts of things. This is very, you see, by coming to a certain degree of understanding, it's bringing you to a place where you could perhaps graduate into a simpler, more profound, but a little bit longer learning about how to deepen this part of yourself. Do you agree? Yeah. Now, that's the answer that we perceive. However, one of the other things that you'll discover if you practice these suggestions a little bit, and we're going to say one is understanding the questions you're facing, writing about it. That's a request that'll change the nature of your understanding about the answers. That if you have some part of a little vision that you don't understand, ask permission for that part to become more obvious later. And you'll eventually learn to even do that while you're journeying, where you'll be able to actually stop and slow something down until it deeper reveals itself, okay? Then the third thing is that if you do not understand what the answer means, then try to prioritize the problems in your life and compare the list with what you intuit about what you saw, and perhaps a deeper level of intuition will suddenly speak through all three of these talents, which is the bonding of the masculine and feminine parts of your mind and deepening your awareness of the sacred, we're going to call it the red path of life. Do you comprehend? For the young Indian children were taught all of these talents, and there was no fear or obligation or misunderstanding about masculine and feminine. They didn't even use that language. They spoke in different words, but there was no quarreling amongst the sexes at that time. And this has troubled you for a while. Not you personally as much as it's a very difficult time to allow the masculine and the feminine to slowly blend. Two very different schools, we're going to say indigenous thought and East Indian thought, and they're all kind of mixed and clumped together, and they're two very separate classes, two very different ideas about how to come into understanding of your life or even the purpose of life. Yeah, and you might want to do a little study, and it's not one is bad or one is good, it's that in your own mind you can actually start understanding the difference between the two, and when you might want to apply one and when you might want to apply the other. Does that help? Now, as promised, we want to do a little bit of a diagnosis about a couple of areas on your back, and there's some serious stretching and muscle building in the low back, the hip, and the leg that you need, correct?
Right.
Yeah, and what we would recommend if you want to take any class of stretching and muscle strengthening is Pilates would be better for yourself. And again, we're kind of joking. You see, you've lived several lives as Indians, and we don't want to play woo-woo or play Indian. Or we're very respectful, of their traditions. But what we want to say is muscle, particularly core building, was a part of the mystery schools the kids in the pueblos and the villages were taught. But they didn't call it Pilates, they called it preparation for the hard work of life. And eventually building yourself like a little stone hut or a little pueblo or, do you understand? Like a landscaping designed for this self. Now, we want to kind of joke again. Another part of your path is the understanding of the sacredness of place. You need a private, ceremonial, little open-skied kiva. Like you're a star dreamer.